We left off at a almost like a soap opera last week. We kind of stopped in the middle of the action. So we're in Judges chapter 7. And as we left things last week, Gideon had recruited his army. That army was reduced by God from 32,000 to 300. And as we left things last week, Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home. He kept the 300 who took over the provisions and the trumpets of the others. And now we're getting ready for the next move. What we're going to do over the next 40 minutes tonight, give or take a little bit, is that we're going to meet Gideon where he is, because he came from someone who was so reserved and so timid and quite frankly, kind of fearful a week ago, to someone of great courage at this point in his life. If Gideon got to chapter 7 and he stayed at chapter 7, this would be an incredible story. It is an incredible story, but unfortunately there's chapter 8. And there are some things about Gideon in chapter 8 that probably aren't part of the children's ministry story, but are an important part of the story for us to learn from. Let's begin with chapter 7, verses 9 through 14. Could I have a reader for that, please? Judges 7, 9 through 14. Yes, Jack, thank you.
Now the camp of Midian lay below him in the valley. During that night, the Lord said to Gideon, "Get up, go down against the camp, because I am going to give it into your hands. You are afraid to attack. Go down to the camp with your servant Purah and listen to what they are saying. Afterward, you will be encouraged to attack the camp." So he and Purah, his servant, went down to the outposts of the camp. The Midianites, the Amalekites, and all the other eastern peoples had settled in the valley, thick as locusts. Their camels could no more be counted than the sand on the seashore. Gideon arrived just as a man was telling a friend his dream. "I had a dream," he was saying. "A round loaf of barley bread came tumbling into the Midianite camp. It struck the tent with such force that the tent overturned and collapsed." His friend responded, "This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hands."
That's a great dream interpretation based on what was said. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. First thing I want to call to your attention is verse 9 in the NIV is not a particularly good translation. I don't say that to beat up on translation, but just to make sure that we get this nuance. When God says to Gideon, "Get up, go down against the camp," because if your version says, "I am going to give it into your hands," it would much better say, "I have given it into your hands." And that's a big difference. Okay? Because in this case, this is the future prophetic voice of God saying, this battle's already been fought. It's already over. You're going to go do it, but it's done. Okay? This is fait accompli. This outcome has already been determined. And that's the message that God is giving Gideon. The deal is done. Okay? Now, that even adds, when you think about what God has just told Gideon, this is a done deal. I have accomplished this already, because in God's mind, it's done. Okay? That makes verse 10 all the more interesting. Now, if you're afraid to go, after I just told you that I got this, that you're victorious, and that the deal is done, after I've told you this, if you are afraid, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. All right, go ahead, Dave.
Isn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's extremely rare for God to do that, what he does in verse 10.
Oh, yeah.
I just can't recall of another place where he says, if you're afraid, then do this other.
Yeah. Now, I will say he meets Moses where he is one time with his spear, and he gives him Aaron. But for the most part, this, and for what, to add to this, remember that God has already brought fire from a rock for Gideon's benefit. He's already seen wet fleece. He's already seen dry fleece. God's given him a lot, but God says, now, you ever said if to your child and you didn't mean if, you meant since, or because I already know this to be true? What does this tell us about God, though? That he would deal with Gideon this way? Yeah.
He's very sensitive to Gideon himself, right? He's a flawed human, duh, okay? And God knows this, and he's sensitive to that. He's not starting from a place of judgment.
Yeah. And he goes right to where Gideon, because he knows Gideon better than anybody does. And he goes there and he meets them there. And he says, now, if you're afraid, let me tell you what to do. And go down here and just listen in. And I think you might like what you hear. And we'll come to what he hears here in just a minute. Go ahead.
I think God knows us. He knows our hearts. He knows our minds. He knows our fears. He knows our weak points and our strong points. And I think that, there are people that need a nudge, that need a way to do something. And Gideon, seems like a man that would do that. Some of us will just rush right in because that's what we need to do. Some people hesitate, and some people won't go at all.
Sure.
So, and God knows all of this. So if he's going to use somebody, he's going to make it so they can do the job that he has in store for them.
Okay. So God knows whose heart is and whose personality is of a mindset of ready, fire, aim, and whose mindset is ready, aim, 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 aim.
Yeah.
God knows. God knows. Yeah, go ahead.
I also think it's very interesting. So in verse 9, I've already got this. It's already a done deal. Okay. Verse 10, there's no question in his mind whether Gideon's going to be afraid. The if isn't about God.
Yeah.
The if is basically giving Gideon permission to feel the feelings that God knows he's going to have.
There you go.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point. So he gives him this idea to go and listen in on this conversation. And verse 13, somebody's telling somebody had a dream, and I don't know if I've never had a dream like this before. A round loaf of barley comes down a hill, comes into the Midianite camp, hits a tent and knocks the tent over. And if that's not weird enough, the immediate response is, this could not be nothing but the sword of the Lord and Gideon. I mean, isn't that the conclusion you would draw from that dream?
Oh, naturally.
There is a little something to it, though. Okay, and this is it. So barley grain had about half the value of wheat, and the bread made from barley was always considered inferior bread. So you've got Israel's little bitty band of 300 people considered inferior to the countless thousands of Midian and Amalek. Midianite men interpreted the dream to mean the inferior forces defeated the superior forces. So apparently that's where that's what they had their freak out moment about. Now, if the Midianites have thousands and thousands and thousands of soldiers in their camp, and it says here that even their camels could be no more counted than the sand of the sea. What's the statistical probability of Gideon coming to the exact conversation he needs to hear?
Not likely.
With man, 0, with God, 100%.
Yeah, that's a one in a God thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because only God can make that happen. Anybody see anything in 9 through 14 that grabs your attention?
Well, God evidently must have spoken to the person who interpreted the dream somehow.
Yeah. So God can move here, can move here, can move here.
I think we're certainly finding out here, God does work in mysterious ways.
Yes, yes, he does. And talk about teeing somebody up. It's about to get even more mysterious.
It's interesting that the Midianite recognizes that God has already let this happen. Where Gideon was struggling with,
Yeah,
let it happen.
the Midianite seems to be pretty, faith might not be the right word, but he seems pretty convinced that God's about to do something that I'm not so too excited about. Yeah.
I think it's worth pointing out here that through particularly the Old Testament, it comes back, if you're paying attention frequently, God is obviously moving, not just within the Israelites.
Sure.
Okay, others are ignoring him, so they pay the consequences, as do the Israelites.
Sure.
But God is moving in everyone's life,
Yeah.
not just, today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Gideon hears the dream and its interpretation. And I want you to notice before we move on that when Gideon hears the dream interpretation, the next thing he does is he bows down and he worships. And that is an important thing. It's the same thing Joshua did in Joshua chapter 5 before they went into Jericho. Let's stop and let's worship. Because we're going to be in alignment with God before we go do God's work. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So they're going to have this moment of worship. He returned to the camp of Israel and then he called up. And this sounds a little different than the Gideon of chapter 6. Get up. The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands. Dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed the trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them with torches on the inside. Watch me, he told them. Follow my lead. That sounds like Gideon, right? Follow my lead. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. And when I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow your trumpets and shout for the Lord and for Gideon. All that away for chapter 8. Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. They blew their trumpets. They broke the jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets, smashed the jars, grasping the torches in their left hands, holding in their right hands the trumpets they were to blow. They shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." And while each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. And when the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The army fled to Beth Shittah toward Zerah and as far as the border of Abel Meholah near Tabbath. Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and all Manasseh were called out. They pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and seize the waters of the Jordan ahead of them as far as Beth Barah." So all the men of Ephraim were called out. They seized the waters of the Jordan as far as Beth Barah. They captured 2 of the Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeeb at the winepress of Zeeb. They pursued the Midianites, brought the heads of Oreb and Zeeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan. This is a rout. Okay. Describe the changes you see in Gideon in this one paragraph.
Confidence.
Very confident. Very confident. Okay.
And it's not just a general confidence. He is confident in the Lord. he's confident in his place. Not that he is the Lord, but that he is with
I'm on God business.
the right side. That shows the right side, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm on a mission from God. Were you thinking something? Gideon is becoming exactly what the angel said in chapter 6. God is with you, mighty warrior. Well, now you are. Okay. So, yeah.
By the way, I'm sorry. So I love that. So mighty warrior. Did anything in there say that he actually raised his sword? What did he raise?
Trumpet.
He raised a trumpet. Okay. He was a mighty warrior because God was with him, not because he was great with the sword.
And the Lord is exactly like that, as David just articulated. The Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other.
Yep.
So you can just stand back and let them have it. So couple of thoughts. One, whatever is opposed to God is never as strong as it appears. Okay?
Amen.
It's never as strong as it appears. That's a 2022 message, okay? Whatever is opposed to God is not as strong as it may appear. Okay? Even in our own lives, even when we're battling temptations of varying kinds, Satan is a liar and he's deceitful, but he can't make you sin. Any power of idols can be broken. That which is opposed to God is never as strong as it appears. How do you like this battle strategy? If any of you had ever had spent any military time, I bet you never pulled out the strategy of blow your trumpet, break the clay jar, shout, and stand back and watch. That's it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's all it is.
Well, they had precedence though with Jericho.
Oh, yeah. Shout and watch it happen. Yep. Good point. Very good point. Now, of course, in this battle, no one can take credit, and that's about to become a problem, by the way, in chapter 8. No one can take credit for it because the enemy turned and killed each other. So who's going to come back and say, I did this and I did this? Not one of you did a thing, but blew a trumpet, and y'all did what Gideon did, okay? God is the one who did this battle. Now, for the Midianites, they would have expected, if the Israelites were a typical military, they would have expected 1 in 1,000 to be carrying torches and blowing trumpets. So when they see hundreds, they're thinking for each one they see, multiply that by 1,000. That's how many people the Midianites are thinking are there. So it is a brilliant. Of course it is. God did it. And of course, they need to break the clay jars because otherwise you're not going to see the light, because light only goes through broken pitchers. Now that's a sermon for another day. But so they pursue Oreb and Zeeb at the wine press. They pursue them, and I would love it if verse 26, which isn't there in Judges chapter 7, and said, and the people had peace for 300 years and all of that. Unfortunately, sometimes when battles are won, landmines are still left behind. And we're about to see in this particular thing, a battle has been won and a lot of landmines have been left behind. Let's look in verse 1 through 3 of chapter 8. The Ephraimites asked Gideon, why have you treated us like this? Why didn't you call us when you went to fight Midian? They challenged him vigorously, but he answered them, oh, what have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't the gleanings of Ephraim's grapes better than the full grape harvest of Abiezer? God gave Oreb and Zeeb, the Midianite leaders, into your hands. What was I able to do compared to you? And at this, their resentment subsided. All right. Why are the Ephraimites mad? They're pretty
They
much.
hadn't been,
Go ahead.
they hadn't been called up back in chapter 6.
Yeah, they weren't called into battle. If Ephraim's supposed to be the warrior tribe, they're supposed to be militarily, they're supposed to be the strongest. They have the best fighters. Ephraim is the A team, okay? And they're not called into the battle to start with. The tabernacle is located in Shiloh. Shiloh's in Ephraim, okay? So there's a lot of assumptions on on behalf of the Ephraimites that if there's going to be something going down, we ought to be a part of this. They are not a part of this. Now, go back one chapter, chapter 7, verse 2. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into your hands, or Israel would boast against me. Think God knew what he was talking about? Because look what the Ephraimites would very much like to do.
Yeah.
Now, can you think of another reason the Ephraimites might be annoyed? Let me set you up. To the victor goes the
Spoils.
Well,
Guess who's not getting spoils?
Yeah.
David, when David became king, long time after this, he set up guidelines for spoils after great military victory. That's not in place yet. So to the conquerors go the spoils, and the Ephraimites aren't getting a whole lot of share in the spoils. So on several levels, they are annoyed. Now, what Ephraim could have done is he could have said, now look, number one, the battle belongs to the Lord. I did what God was telling me. You got a problem with that? He could have put the Ephraimites in their place. We would call it a come to Jesus meeting. He could have humbled them. He could have just threw up his hands and said, oh, I'm just doing what God told me to do. I mean, but Gideon didn't do any of that. Instead, Gideon goes to extraordinary lengths basically to stroke their egos. Right? Why would Gideon do that?
He knew what they wanted.
He did. He did. And he also knows that a proverb writer hadn't written this yet, but he knew the truth of it. A soft answer turns away wrath. And if I can appease these guys, it will be to all of Israel's long-term benefit. Because we don't need to get into a battle with each other after we just accomplished what we accomplished. And if I can say what needs to be said to get them on board, and of course, if Gideon had asked them to come to the battle, I don't know if they would have come.
Here comes sacrifices.
Yeah, because here's Gideon from those, he calls himself the least clan of the weakest tribe. Think somebody from Ephraim's going to follow him? But now they're mad because he didn't do it. But Gideon deals with them very carefully and very gently, which makes the next interaction all the more interesting. Now it's not so much. Gideon and his 300 men, exhausted yet keeping up the pursuit, came to Jordan and crossed it. He said to the men of Succoth, "Give my troops some bread. They're worn out. I'm still pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." The officials of Succoth said this, "You already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession," easy for you to say. "Why should we give bread to your troops?" Now Gideon replies, "Just for that, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I'm going to tear your flesh with desert thorns and briars." Woo! All right, got a little temper. From there, he went up to Peniel. He made the same request of them, but they answered as the men of Succoth had. So he said to the men of Peniel, "When I return in triumph, I'm going to tear down this tower." Now Zebah and Zalmunna were Karkov, a force of 15,000 men. All that were left of the armies of the eastern peoples, 120,000 swordsmen had fallen. Gideon went up by the route of the nomads east of Nob and attacked the unsuspecting army. Zebah and Zalmunna, the two kings of Midian, fled. He pursued them. He captured them. He routed the whole army. So then Gideon returns from the battle by the pass of Heres. He caught a young man of Succoth. He questioned him. The young man wrote down for him the names of the 77 officials of Succoth, the elders of the town. Gideon came to the men and said, "Here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me by saying, 'Do you already have them in your possession? Why should we give bread to your exhausted men?'" Then Gideon, verse 16, took the elders of the town and he taught the men of Succoth a lesson by punishing them with desert thorns and briars. He pulled down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the town. Whoa, whoa. All right. All right. First of all, why are the people of Succoth and Peniel so reluctant to help Gideon's men? What are they afraid of?
Afraid if he doesn't win, the others are going to come after them.
Absolutely. Hedging his bets. Okay, absolutely. Exactly afraid. And when you're looking at it through human eyes, 300, thousands, okay, all right, makes sense. So it's interesting, Ephraim is claiming they wish that Gideon had called sooner. These guys are saying, call us later. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about Ephraim. It's all very easy to say, you should have called me when the battle's already over, right?
Oh, yeah.
Going up against incredible odds before the battle is engaged, that takes real courage or stupidity.
Yeah, but Gideon is your leader. Okay. Now.
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeannie. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just curious, what tribe was Succoth and Peniel in?
Good question. I have no idea. I didn't look it up. Good question. I do not know. What we do know is that they were not particularly interested in this moment in helping. When the Ephraimites were giving Gideon a hard time, he was very gentle with them. With these guys, he's going to beat them with thorns. Now, when we're talking about thorns, we're not talking about what we find on a rose. We're talking about thorns. Okay. Gideon does not show them a hint of the kindness that he showed to Ephraim. What's the difference? Both of them are giving him issues. They're both Israelites. So why is he so kind to one? And yeah, go ahead.
Well, the Ephraimites chastised them for not engaging them. We already talked about that.
Sure.
These guys simply refused to help him when he was in pretty good need.
And if they're not helping him, who are they kind of helping?
Yeah.
The other guy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not out and out treason, but it's kind of like treason's first cousin. Okay. Now, you've also got the whole Eastern notion of hospitality. Okay. That you meet the needs of strangers as if they were your relatives. That's just what you do. We're Israelites. That's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's not happening. The only kind of lesson that you can teach with thorns and briars is almost capital punishment like. Okay, and then a tower actually did fall. Now, here's a nuanced question. I don't have a right or wrong, but I am interested in your thought. Do you think Gideon should have been this cruel?
Just based on what we've read so far. If God has not instructed him to do this, then no, I don't think he should have been this cruel. Well, let's back up. He made a promise that he was going to do this when they refused it.
Yes.
I think he's
On that level, he kept his promise.
do it. Should he be threatened that in the first place? If God didn't tell him to do that, I don't think that's the path you go.
Okay. I'm kind of trekking with you. And again, that's just my opinion. But we have no textual evidence that God said, all right, Gideon, deal with them this way.
So then how does that compare to, back in chapter 7, we talked about how God was a little bit more gentle with Gideon because he wanted to, why does Gideon not allow God to deal with these other guys in the same way? I mean, God has already shown him that, I can do all this stuff. You were a part of something that caused a whole army, tens of thousands of men to turn against each other. So yeah, you're going to meet some obstacles here, but and then he prayed. So I don't understand why not. And it's not that I don't understand, but I mean, I would think if it were me, I don't think I would have been threatening because God could have threatened Gideon, you either go do this but he didn't do that. If you are afraid.
Sure. There's this idea that God is capable of taking care of himself. And and if you trust God in this battle, you can trust God to deal with, God, you see what they're doing to me. I leave this, however you want to deal with this, God. What are you going to say, Maureen?
Well, I was going to play devil's advocate a little bit because I was
You always should play a devil's advocate in church, shouldn't you?
I was just thinking, okay, I mean, these people were supposed to really be helping him, but yet they didn't really side with him. They didn't help him. So as we said, they're against him. They're really siding with the ones he's running after.
Yep.
And sometimes in war, you punish your enemies.
Maybe he's feeling,
And maybe he felt like that was kind of necessary or something.
feel betrayed.
I guess my counter to that is that's human thinking.
Yeah,
Okay?
Yeah.
As opposed to thinking like God. And Gideon's not God, don't get me wrong.
yeah.
I'm not that other guy. I've made, absolutely. One of the things I'm thinking of relative to what Kim was saying is if you think of what Jesus taught, the parable he talked about, the guy whose debts were forgiven and then he does forgive the debts of the guy who owes him. Right? When God shows you mercy, it would be really nice if you showed mercy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We got another landmine. Well, we got two more landmines to deal with. All right. Verse 18, he asks even the ones he's captured, what kind of men did you kill at Tabor? Men like you, they answered. Each one with the bearing of a prince. Gideon replied, by the way, this brings some information we did not know previously. Those were my brothers, the son of my own mother. As surely as the Lord lives, if I had spared their lives, I would not kill you. Turning to Jether, his oldest son, he said, kill him. Jether didn't draw his sword. He's only a boy. He was afraid. Ziba, wonder where he got fear from. Ziba and Zalmunna said, come on, do it yourself. As is the man, so is his strength. Gideon stepped forward. Okay. Gideon stepped forward and killed him and took the ornaments off the camel's neck. Now, a couple of things to understand. There is no Israelite police force. Okay. Each family is expected to track down and deal with. If you murdered somebody in my family, it's my responsibility to go track this down and try to make this right. We don't have any other information about how Gideon's brothers were murdered. My underlying guess, is that we read all about the raids going on in chapter 6, the Midianite raids. It would make sense that it happened then. I don't know that it happened then. That's just my guess. Why did Gideon ask his son to kill off the kings? It's like an extra step in the story here.
Trying to get his son to be at a different place in manhood. In other words, to not have the kind of fear he did.
Okay, that's certainly possible, because if his son pulls this off and actually does kill them, from that point forward, he's going to be a hero. So he's kind of giving his son an opportunity and a training. If you're thinking kind of dark, if Jether is a boy and isn't experienced in this, I know this sounds gross, y'all, but he could mess up killing somebody. Mm-hmm. That would be worse, not better. Of course, the son is unable to, is afraid to do it. The kings try to goad Gideon into doing it himself. I personally think they're trying to goad Gideon into doing it himself because they figured Gideon would be, I know this sounds cruel again, but he'd be more efficient.
Yeah.
In ending their life.
Mike, you think he might just ask his son to do that, to keep it in the family? I mean, he talks about his family being murdered. He says, those are my brothers, the sons of my own mother. As sure as the Lord lives, if you'd spared their lives, I would not kill you. And then he immediately turns to his son, kill him. And so he's talking about, this is the family that you were talking about. Just as my justice for my family, I'm going to kill you. And he asked his son to do it, to keep it, in the family.
That's a good point. What are you going to say?
I was going to say that, but this also follows the law of the time of an eye for an eye.
Absolutely.
Sure, it does. Okay. All right, here's what I'm dealing with. It's 7:57 and I've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm not going to do that to y'all. I am going to do it to you, but I'm not going to do it to you right now. This won't be the smoothest transition, but we'll pick up there next week, because it's very important that we look at this last section, because this last section is kind of a turning point in the whole book of Judges. So we'll pick up in chapter 8, verse 22 next week. If you're reading ahead, go ahead and look at chapter 9 at least, and then we'll go from there. Okay? All right. Please, sir.
Father God, we're thankful for the opportunity to be together tonight to encourage and study your word. We're thankful, Father, that you love us, that you gave us your Son, Jesus Christ. We're thankful that he was willing to suffer Calvary for the forgiveness of our sins. And we're thankful, Father, that we can be brothers and sisters in Christ. We pray, Father, that as we leave here tonight, we will reflect you in all that we do and all that we say, that others will look at us and see you. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, everybody online. We appreciate y'all. Love you. Have a good rest of the
Take care. Love y'all.
Let me know whatever you need for time. Okay.